Okay, so in this part of the series we're going to be creating the database table that stores the data for our users, which is obviously the initial step that we take to work out which data that we want to capture from our users, the data that we want to store, and then eventually the data that we're going to give back out to them. In this part we're just going to be creating the users table, and this is going to store the registered accounts. Later on we'll add more tables that deal with different things, but in this part we're just going to focus on the users table itself, and that will allow us to create our overall login and register system. So I've already created a database table, and I've just called this LR for login and register. You can call your database table anything you like, usually relating to your site in some way. But I'm going to go ahead now and create a table on this database. So I'm using PHP MyAdmin, which is an interface to our MySQL server and our databases, and this is available in the browser. So you can go ahead and download this, and it's available with pre-made up packages like XAMPP or WAMP, anything like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and create this table. So I'm going to call this users. Now the number of columns I know because I've already planned this out, and it's going to be 7, but if you don't know, that's fine. We can just go and put in any value here, and we can add fields as we go, but I know that it's 7, so I'm going to choose 7. You can see that just down here we can add 1 or however many columns on here, so that's not a problem. Just pop in a number if you're not too sure. You might choose to store more data as well than I am. You might choose to expand your registration page to let your users ask if they want to sign up for a mailing list, or you want to might want to capture their gender, anything like that. Okay, so the first field that we're going to create will be the primary key, and this will identify the users uniquely and also provide us with an index for our table. So this is going to be user_ID. Now the type is going to be an integer. This just means it's a whole number. We're never going to have point values in here. The others that we're going to look at are varchar and text eventually, but for now we really don't worry too much about what these mean. I'll try and explain as I go along. So if we scroll all the way along, AI stands for auto increment. You can see that it's just popped up there as a little tooltip. We want to check this. Essentially what this means is this value will increment for every record that we add. So the first user, say Alex, is 1. This field will automatically inject the value 1. If we create another record, say Billy, he'll be 2, Dale 3, 4, and so on. And the index here is primary, so we always have a primary key for a table to keep an index. Okay, so the next one is straightforward. It's username. We obviously don't want this to be a number. We don't want users to be signing up with numbers for username, so we want a varchar, which means variable characters, and we have to provide a length here. So I'm just going to go ahead and say 32. We'll incorporate the length checking into the back end of our code eventually. We also want a password, and I'm going to set this again to a varchar, and this is going to be 32. Now we're going to be storing this as an encrypted string, so bear this in mind. We'll initially be using MD5, which equates to a 32 character string, however long the password is of the user. So 35 and upwards you'll be safe, but this may need a bit of tinkering around with if you're using different encryption methods. Obviously MD5 isn't too secure, but we're just going to be using it for simplicity for now. Okay, so we want to store the user's first name, and we also want to store the user's last name, and these will both be variable characters. Again, I'm just going to set these to 32. You might want to increase this, obviously as you go along, feel free. Email I'm going to set to a varchar, and I'm going to set it to a very strange number, 1024 or 1025. Either one is the maximum characters for an email address. I always do this out of habit, but it's entirely up to you. You can choose a shorter value because it's unlikely to be, but I always like to just put it in there. And lastly, active, and this is going to be the state of the user's account. Initially what we're going to do is we're going to create the login and register system without email activation. Then we're going to go ahead and incorporate email activation into the back end, and ask users to activate their account by email. Now, when a user initially registers, this int is going to be set to 0 to mean that they haven't activated their account. So if we look at the top, you can see our table labels here. You can see that if we scroll, where is it? Oh, default here. So this default value here, we can set as defined and then choose a value. And what I'm going to do is, for active, I'm going to choose as defined and 0. So by default, when we insert a new record, we don't need to specify this value. It'll automatically be 0, and then thus requiring the user to activate their account. Now we can go ahead and change this while we're testing it. We don't actually need to ask a user to activate their email address, activate via email. But we can go ahead and change this. So let's go ahead and save this table. You'll see that we've got a success. Oh, what's happened here? Okay, here we are. So we've created the table. We can see all of our information in here. Well, our structure essentially here. The Browse tab here will allow you to browse the data. So in this case, you can see a big red cross, which means that the table is empty. So it says table seems to be empty. So what we're going to do is initially insert some dummy data into here, because we're going to be building the login part of the system first, because it's the easiest part to do. So once we have inserted some dummy data, we can actually log ourselves into the website and start to play around with how it might feel. And then really the registration is an entirely separate entity from the system, because all it involves is inserting some data in place into this database table. So let's go ahead and insert some dummy data into here. I've clicked the Insert tab at the top of PHP My Admin, and I'm going to essentially just fill this form out here. You can see here that we've got a second value, but we've got ignore ticked, and we don't actually need to take this one into account. So I'm going to choose a username, and that's just going to be Alex. Now password's a slightly trickier one, because I'm not sure what my password is going to be encrypted. However, MySQL has a built-in MD5 hashing function. So what we can actually do is we can go ahead and type in a value here. So I'm just going to choose password as my password. And from this drop-down list here, we have a list of functions that we can use. And I'm going to choose MD5. So essentially, we're saying this value is going to be the result of the MD5 function passing this value, which will give us an MD5 string. And we'll see this in a minute when we browse after we've finished. So first name, nothing special. It's just going to be my first name, and then my last name as well. I'm also going to give my email address, so alex@phpacademy.org. And active, I'm going to leave set to 0 just for now, but we can come in here anytime and go ahead and change that. So I'm going to go ahead and click go. Go back to browse, and you can see that I've got user ID 1. Notice that when I clicked on insert, I didn't actually enter any data here. It's automatically given me the value of 1. I've got my username, which I provided, my MD5 hashed password, which you can see there, it doesn't represent the string password. First name, last name, email, and active. So everything's there that we need to actually log ourselves in, create a session, allow us to browse around and actually authenticate a user to protect against specific pages. So essentially we've created our database table, or our database table, and we filled this in with some dummy data. And in the next part we'll actually look at building the site from there.